After our wedding, I crossed the line with a coworker. My husband found out and did this. Hey Reddit, my name is Ashley and I'm a 33-year-old woman. My husband's name is Justin and he's a 34-year-old man. We've been married for about 6 years and have one kid who I'll call Max. He's about 5. My husband and I, we've known each other all our lives. Crazy things have happened, and I thought I'd share them here with you. My husband brutally assaulted the colleague I had cheated on with at a corporate party. It's been a whirlwind, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Justin and I have known each other practically forever. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and shared a lot of memories. But it wasn't until after college that we started seeing each other in a different light. Our first official date was a mix of nostalgia and excitement. We decided to keep it simple and went to our favorite childhood pizza place. Sitting across from each other, I couldn't help but smile, thinking about all the years we'd known each other. Justin was charming as ever, telling me stories from our school days that made me laugh until tears streamed down my face. After dinner, we took a walk through the old neighborhood, reminiscing about our adventures as kids. It felt like no time had passed at all, yet everything had changed. We even stood on the street corner where we used to wait for the school bus. Justin took my hand and looked into my eyes, and in that moment, I knew that our relationship was something truly special. For our second date, Justin planned a surprise outing. He picked me up in the afternoon and drove us to a nearby beach. It was a beautiful day, with the sun shining brightly and a gentle breeze blowing. We walked along the shore, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company. Justin had packed a picnic, and we sat on a blanket, eating sandwiches and watching the waves. As the sun began to set, he took my hand and led me to the water's edge. We stood there watching the sunset, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. After the sun had set, we walked back to the car, hand in hand, reluctant to let go of the magic of the evening. Justin drove me home, and we sat in the car outside my house, talking and laughing until late into the night. It was a perfect second date, and I knew then that I was falling for him. For our third date, Justin surprised me by taking me to a cozy little Italian restaurant downtown. The ambiance was romantic, with soft lighting and Italian music playing in the background. We shared a delicious meal of pasta and wine, laughing and talking as if we had known each other for years. After dinner, Justin suggested we take a walk in the nearby park. It was a warm summer evening and the park was beautiful, with flowers in full bloom and fireflies dancing in the air. We walked hand in hand, stopping occasionally to sit on a bench and enjoy the view. As we walked, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. Justin told me about his job and his passion for music, while I shared my love for art and travel. It felt like we were opening up to each other in a way we hadn't before, and I knew then that this was something special. For our fourth date, Justin took me to a local art gallery, knowing my love for art. It was a small, intimate gallery featuring local artists, and I was thrilled to explore it with him. We spent hours wandering through the exhibits, discussing our favorite pieces and sharing our thoughts on art and life. After the gallery, Justin surprised me by taking me to a nearby park where a live jazz band was playing. We sat on a blanket under the stars, listening to the music and talking late into the night. It was such a romantic and thoughtful gesture, and I felt incredibly lucky to be with him. As the night came to a close, Justin walked me back to my car, and we shared a sweet and tender kiss goodnight. I knew then that I had fallen absolutely in love with him and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. For our fifth date, Justin planned a romantic evening at a fancy restaurant in the city. He picked me up and surprised me with a bouquet of my favorite flowers, roses, which made me feel so special. The restaurant he chose had a cozy atmosphere with dim lighting and soft music, creating the perfect ambiance for a romantic dinner. Justin had made reservations, and we were seated at a private table by the window, overlooking the city skyline. Throughout the evening, we shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed delicious food and wine. Justin was such a gentleman, pulling out my chair, refilling my glass, and making sure I felt comfortable and cared for. After dinner, Justin suggested we take a walk along the riverfront. It was a beautiful night, and the city lights reflected off the water, creating a magical scene. We walked hand in hand, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company. As the night came to an end, Justin walked me back to my car, and we shared a passionate kiss goodnight. I legit couldn't stop smiling as I drove home, and I felt so grateful to have him in my life. For our sixth date, my heart was fluttered with excitement. Justin and I had been growing closer with each date, and I couldn't wait to see what he had planned for us this time. From our first meeting as kids to our first kiss, each moment had been filled with laughter and love. Justin had a way of making me feel special, and I cherished every moment we spent together. When Justin arrived, he greeted me with a bouquet of flowers and a warm smile. He looked handsome in his suit, and I felt a surge of affection for him. We drove to a fancy restaurant downtown, where Justin had made reservations for us. The restaurant was elegant, with soft lighting and a romantic atmosphere. Justin led me to our table, and we sat down to peruse the menu. We talked and laughed, sharing stories and jokes as we enjoyed our meal. After dinner, Justin surprised me by taking me to a nearby park. The park was beautifully lit up with fairy lights, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. Justin took my hand and led me to a secluded spot overlooking a lake. We sat down on a bench, and Justin pulled out a small box from his pocket. My heart skipped a beat as he opened the box to reveal a beautiful necklace. It was simple yet elegant, and I knew it was perfect for me. Taking the necklace, Justin gently placed it around my neck. I could feel tears pricking at the corner of my eyes as I realized how much Justin truly cared for me. He leaned in and kissed me softly, and I melted into his embrace. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that this was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Justin was kind, loving, and thoughtful, and I felt incredibly lucky to have him by my side. Then we decided to move in together. Moving in together was a big step for us. We were both excited to start this new chapter in our relationship, but it also came with its challenges. One of the biggest struggles we faced was merging our lifestyles and habits. Justin was very organized and liked things a certain way, while I was more laid back and tended to be a bit messy. We had to find a balance and learn to compromise on things like household chores and decorating our home. Another challenge was managing our finances. We both had our own ways of budgeting and spending money, and we had to learn to align our financial goals and priorities. Despite these challenges, moving in together also brought us closer. We learned more about each other and grew as a couple. It was a learning experience, but one that ultimately strengthened our relationship. Justin's proposal was a moment I'll never forget. He took me to our favorite spot in the city, a beautiful park with a view of the skyline. It was a perfect evening. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with hues of pink and orange. We walked through the park. Justin suddenly got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. He poured his heart out, telling me how much he loved me and how he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. It was such a romantic and heartfelt moment, and I couldn't hold back my tears of joy. Of course, I said yes. We were both over the moon with happiness. When we dove into wedding planning, things became more stressful than I ever imagined. Justin's parents, being wealthy, offered to buy us a house in any location of our choosing. It was an incredibly generous offer, but there was a catch. My name wouldn't be on the deed. Justin's parents had never been fond of me, and this was their way of exerting control over our lives. The house became a point of contention between Justin and me. He wanted to accept his parents' offer, seeing it as a practical choice, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being sidelined and disrespected. It led to many arguments and tense discussions about our future, but I eventually agreed and yielded. On top of that, wedding planning itself was overwhelming. There were so many decisions to make, from the guest list to the venue to the flowers. Justin's parents had strong opinions about everything, adding to the stress. I felt like I was losing control over my own wedding, and it strained our relationship. Despite the challenges, we managed to pull off a beautiful wedding. But the tensions with Justin's parents and the house issue did linger a bit. A few months after we had just gotten married, I found out I was pregnant. It was a mix of excitement and nervousness, but we couldn't wait to welcome our first child. We decided to name him Max, a name we both loved. The first few months of my pregnancy were filled with excitement and joy. Justin and I were thrilled to be starting a family together, and we eagerly awaited the arrival of our little one. However, as my pregnancy progressed, I began to experience some unexpected challenges. I struggled with morning sickness, which seemed to last all day and made it difficult to eat or even get out of bed. I was constantly tired, and simple tasks like cooking dinner or doing laundry felt like insurmountable obstacles. Justin was incredibly supportive, but I could see the worry in his eyes as he watched me struggle. My belly grew, and so did my discomfort. I experienced backaches, swollen feet, and constant heartburn. I found it difficult to find a comfortable position to sleep in, and I often woke up feeling more tired than when I had gone to bed. Justin did his best to help, rubbing my back and feet and reassuring me that everything would be okay. Despite the physical challenges, the emotional toll of pregnancy was even greater. I worried constantly about the health and well-being of our baby. Every twinge or ache sent me into a panic, and I found myself constantly checking my phone for messages from my doctor. Justin was my rock during this time, calming my fears and reminding me that we were in this together. And when my due date approached, the anticipation and anxiety grew. I was excited to meet our baby, but I was also terrified of the unknown. Would I be a good mother? Would our baby be healthy? Justin was my constant source of reassurance, holding my hand through every contraction and whispering words of encouragement in my ear. When our son Max was finally born, all the struggles of pregnancy faded away. Holding him in my arms, I knew that every moment of discomfort had been worth it. However, Justin's parents saw this as another opportunity to assert control. They had strong opinions about everything, including the name of their grandson. They wanted us to choose a name from their family's tradition, but we were set on Max. Justin, to my surprise, stood firm. He made it clear to his parents that this was our decision to make, and that if they couldn't respect that, he would consider cutting off contact with them. It was a bold move, but it worked. His parents realized that Justin was serious and eventually yielded, accepting Max as the name for their grandson. It was a turning point in our relationship with Justin's parents. They began to understand that we were a family unit now, and they couldn't dictate our choices. It was a huge relief to know that we could make decisions for our family without interference. As Max grew, so did the challenges in our lives. Justin had always been passionate about music, but his parents never approved. Instead, they influenced him to take a job at their company, which paid exceptionally well. This job allowed Justin to take care of all the bills, which was a relief for me, as I tended to spend more extravagantly. However, Justin's job came at a cost. He didn't enjoy it, and it took a toll on his happiness. Despite the financial security it provided, Justin felt unfulfilled. On the other hand, I had a regular 9-to-5 job in a corporate setting. It wasn't as glamorous or well-paying as Justin's job, but it gave me a sense of purpose. Despite our different career paths, Justin and I were committed to making our marriage work. We supported each other through the ups and downs until I fucked up. The morning of our wedding day was a flurry of excitement and nerves. I sat in front of the mirror and my hands trembling slightly. I couldn't believe that the day I had dreamed of since I was a little girl was finally here. I slipped into my wedding dress feeling like a princess and took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. When I walked down the aisle towards Justin, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. I was filled with love for this man who had been by my side through thick and thin, and gratitude for all the friends and family who had come to celebrate with us. During the ceremony, when we exchanged vows, I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I promised to love Justin for the rest of my days, and I meant every word with all my heart. The reception was a whirlwind of joy and laughter. We danced, we ate, we toasted to our future together. And when I looked around at the smiling faces of our loved ones, I knew that this was the happiest day of my life. After Max was born and I took some time off work to focus on being a mother, I started to feel a bit restless. Don't get me wrong, I loved being at home with Max, but I missed the sense of purpose that came with working. I missed interacting with other adults and using my skills in a professional setting. So when Max was about 4 years old, I started looking for a job. Justin suggested that I work at his parents' company, which was a well-established firm with a lot of opportunities for growth. However, I didn't feel comfortable working there. I wanted my own identity separate from Justin and his family, and I felt that working at his parents' company would blur those lines. Instead, I decided to look for a job in the corporate world, and that was how I landed a job at a local company, and I was excited to get back into the workforce. Justin was supportive of my decision, and he encouraged me to pursue my career goals. Starting a new job while also taking care of Max was challenging, but I was determined to make it work. I hired a nanny to help with childcare, and Justin pitched in whenever he could. The person placed in charge of training me was a man named Mark. He was charming, friendly, and always had a smile on his face. From the moment we met, he made me feel welcome and valued. He was patient and took the time to explain things to me, making sure I understood everything before moving on. As we spent more time together, I couldn't help but notice how easy it was to talk to him. He was a great listener and always had a way of putting me at ease. We shared a lot of laughs during our training sessions, and I found myself starting to look forward to our time together. I found myself drawn to Mark's attention and the way he made me feel. His charming demeanor and efforts to make me feel special were a welcome change from the routine I had grown tired of. At first, his flirtatious behavior was subtle, but as time went on, it became more pronounced. He would go out of his way to bring me snacks or coffee, and his compliments on my outfits made me feel noticed in a way I hadn't in a long time. As I reflected on my life, I realized I was stuck in a repetitive cycle that left me feeling unfulfilled. Each day blurred into the next, with little to differentiate them. Taking care of the house, spending time with Justin, and then settling into a predictable evening routine had become the norm. To be honest, it was like I found myself falling into a rut, stuck in the same routine day in and day out. The monotony of it all was suffocating. Every day seemed like a carbon copy of the one before, and I yearned for something different, something exciting to break the cycle. My life had become a predictable pattern and started to feel restless. I was craving a change from the mundane existence I had fallen into. The thought of breaking this monotony with something exciting and different was incredibly appealing. So when Mark's attention and flirtations provided a spark of excitement, I found myself eagerly welcoming it, craving the change it represented. As time went on, Mark and I developed a close friendship. We shared similar interests and had an easy rapport that made our conversations flow effortlessly. We would discuss the latest movies or gossip about celebrities, finding common ground in our shared enjoyment of pop culture. It was refreshing to have someone like Mark to talk to, especially since Justin had become increasingly distant. Justin seemed to have lost interest in our relationship, focusing more on his work and our kid Max. While I appreciated his efforts to make things work between us, it felt like he was no longer the carefree, fun-loving person I had fallen in love with in college. The pressures of adult life had taken their toll on him, and his best efforts were no longer enough to fulfill me in the way they once had. Our relationship had lost the spark and excitement it once had, leaving me longing for the carefree days of our youth. As Justin became more engrossed in our son Max's life, I found myself gravitating more towards Mark. Our conversations extended beyond the confines of work and started spilling into the weekends when I was at home. It was effortless to talk to Mark, and our chats became a welcome escape from the mundane routine of my married life. While Justin seemed preoccupied with our child and other responsibilities, Mark provided a refreshing break from the monotony. I began to realize that Justin's focus had shifted almost entirely to Max, leaving little room for our relationship. While we still shared intimate moments and occasional deep conversations, they were overshadowed by the overwhelming responsibility of parenthood. I longed for the carefree days of our youth when our relationship was the center of our world. Justin's dedication to our son was admirable, but it left me feeling neglected and yearning for a connection that went beyond the duties of parenting. It didn't take long before my outings with Mark turned into something more. What started as innocent activities like watching a movie or taking a walk soon evolved into secret rendezvous at hotels. Both Mark and I were married, so our homes were off limits. We had to find other places to meet, usually resorting to our cars or booking hotel rooms. Since Justin took care of all the household bills, I used my salary to cover the cost of the hotel rooms. Despite the guilt I felt for betraying my husband, the affair with Mark brought a sense of excitement and thrill into my life. There was something exhilarating about sneaking around and engaging in a forbidden romance. While I still loved Justin, I found myself starting to get addicted to the excitement and passion that Mark had brought into my life. As my affair with Mark consumed more of my time and attention, I found myself becoming increasingly distant from Justin. I was constantly glued to my phone, exchanging messages with Mark and making sure to turn off my location whenever I wasn't at home. Despite my slip-ups, Justin seemed oblivious, his focus consumed by work and our son Max. Justin's impending promotion to CEO, as his father was now looking to retire, only added to his workload, leaving him with little time to notice my growing disengagement. That also meant that Max was way closer to Justin than he was to me, and while I was happy to see Justin bonding with Max, I couldn't shake the feeling of being sidelined in my own family. However, then I didn't care because I was still high off the thrill Mark gave me. One time, Justin almost caught me lying. I had told him I was working overtime, but the truth was far from it. I was at a hotel with Mark, lost in the thrill of our forbidden affair. Justin then called again a few minutes later asking where I was. Panicking, I lied, telling him I had decided not to work late and was on my way home. I could hear the concern in his voice, and it tore at my conscience. The thing is, Justin had gone out of his way to bring me food, to surprise me with a thoughtful gesture only to find out I wasn't at work. but instead I was deceiving him, betraying his trust. The guilt weighed heavily on me. I hurriedly ended the call and rushed to head home. I knew that I was playing a dangerous game that could cost me everything, but it was like I just couldn't stop. I see, thank you for the guidance. Here's the revised version. One time I even skipped Max's school play to be with Mark. Max was looking forward to seeing me there, but I let him down. Justin was also disappointed in me. I lied and said I was working hard for a promotion, but I think they knew it was a lie. Max didn't speak to me for days, and I could see him growing even closer to Justin. My heart really aches with guilt, and I know now that I had hurt my son and damaged my relationship with him. My lies only pushed them further away, and I am now realizing too late the price of my actions. Justin made earnest attempts to bridge the widening gap in our marriage. He planned surprise date nights, showered me with expressions of love, and tried to involve me more in his life and our sons. Despite his efforts, I found it increasingly challenging to reciprocate. My heart and mind were elsewhere, busy in the web of my affair with Mark. Justin's gestures, though genuine, felt like fleeting moments of respite from the inevitable realization that our marriage was crumbling, and I was too far gone to salvage it. As my affair with Mark continued, I found myself growing distant from everyone around me. My relationship with Justin had deteriorated, and our sex life had dwindled to nothing. The closeness I once shared with Max also began to fade. I felt lost, consumed by guilt and longing, unable to connect with those who mattered most. My affair with Mark had taken over my life, leaving little room for anything else. As my affair with Mark escalated, it seemed like everyone at the company knew about our secret relationship. Looking back, I'm surprised that none of my coworkers reached out to Justin or Mark's wife to expose the truth. The guilt weighed heavily on me, knowing that my actions were not only hurting my family, but also affecting my reputation at work. Despite the risks, I couldn't bring myself to end the affair. My desire for something different, something exciting, had completely clouded my judgment and was leading me down a destructive path. The company Christmas party was supposed to be a festive event, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Justin had insisted on coming to my company's party, now that I think about it. I realize he insisted on coming with me because he didn't want me cheating on him with Mark. Either way, so we had arranged for a babysitter to watch Max for the evening. Everything was going well until Mark, in his usual smug manner, decided to approach us. He was incredibly arrogant, implying things and bragging about how he took care of me at work, even referring to himself as my work husband. I tried to brush off his comments and get him to leave us alone, but he persisted. Justin, who had been trying to contain his anger, finally snapped. He turned red with fury and launched himself at Mark. Mark, who clearly wasn't expecting such a reaction, was caught off guard and quickly found himself on the receiving end of Justin's rage. It was a chaotic and humiliating scene, one that I wish had never happened. The aftermath of Justin's outburst was chaotic. He beat Mark brutally, and I was shocked by the violence of it all. Everyone just stood there watching, and no one tried to intervene. Some even said that Mark deserved it, but I couldn't bring myself to get involved, fearing I might inadvertently become a target. After beating Mark to a pulp, Justin stormed off and took the car, leaving me stranded without a way home because we had come together. I tried to stop him, but he was too consumed by anger to listen. From the things he said during the altercation, I realized that he knew about my affair. It was a terrifying realization, but I knew I had to follow him and talk to him. He said stuff like, "I've tolerated you long enough and you think I didn't know." So I knew that he definitely knew, but what I didn't know was how much he knew and how long he had known about me and Mark. Unfortunately, I was left without a ride home. I asked some coworkers for help, but most of them refused, likely believing I deserved the situation. I even tried to order an Uber, but my card was frozen, which I later realized was likely Justin's doing. Eventually, after much pleading, a coworker agreed to give me a ride home, where I hoped to confront Justin and explain myself. When I arrived home, Justin and Max weren't there. I let myself in and decided to wait up for Justin. Max wasn't with the babysitter, so I assumed they had returned home. I tried to track Justin's location on my phone, but he had stopped sharing it. I sent him several texts, but he didn't respond. In a desperate attempt to make amends, I deleted all messages between me and Mark from my phone. Hours later, Justin finally returned home with Max. He seemed much calmer and had even bought Max a lollipop. Justin was surprised to see me and asked why I was there instead of going home with Max. I tried to come up with an excuse, but he saw through it. He asked me why I hadn't gone home with Max, and I knew I had to come clean. I told him everything and lied and even said it had only happened once, and I begged for his forgiveness. I was in tears, and Justin was visibly upset by the revelation. When I confessed to Justin, he looked at me with a mix of sadness and disappointment. He told me that he had known about my affair with Mark for months, and that he had been struggling with how to handle the situation. Justin admitted that he had hoped I would come clean on my own, but my lies had shattered any chance of him forgiving me. He asked me why I would cheat and seemed resigned to the fact that our marriage was over. Justin said he didn't care much anymore, as he had had months to come to terms with the idea that I was no longer the person he thought I was, and that I was now for the streets. I was so relieved when Justin didn't kick me out after I confessed everything. He said he would try to save our marriage, at least for Max's sake. I was overwhelmed with gratitude and cried tears of joy, thanking him profusely. But then he laid out his conditions. He would sleep in the guest room, and I had to quit my job and donate a lot of my stuff to charity as punishment for cheating. I was shocked by his demands, but I was ready to do anything to save our marriage. The next day, I resigned from my job, and although I was supposed to give a 2-week notice, my boss didn't mind because he was planning to fire me anyway because of the altercation at the dinner party. He said it was all my fault, and that he was thinking of even firing Mark, but honestly, so couldn't care less about Mark now. I also even suggested couples counseling, which Justin agreed to. In the weeks that followed my agreement to donate many of my belongings to charity, I felt like I was starting fresh. However, that sense of renewal was short-lived when I discovered that Justin had been deceiving me. He emptied our joint savings account. Despite feeling betrayed, I tried to focus on making amends for my past mistakes, as I felt that was my due punishment for cheating. Plus, much of the money was his anyways, so I couldn't argue with that. I knew that without Justin, I would struggle financially. He was the breadwinner, and I had always been financially dependent on him due to my extravagant spending habits. He earned almost 9 times what I did. I also realized that losing him would mean losing custody of Max, as Justin earned significantly more and Max had grown closer to him. Despite my efforts to rebuild our relationship, Justin abruptly kicked me out one day. I'd gone grocery shopping and I decided to take Max with me, but Justin refused, saying he was taking me out. I didn't mind because Max didn't seem to want to go with me anyways. I was still working on earning back his truth, but that is a slow process. I went out alone, and when I returned, I found my belongings on the porch. I couldn't believe it. After everything, Justin was kicking me out. I called him, desperate to talk, to make him understand, but he didn't pick up. Then a text message came, cold and final. He said he couldn't forgive me and that I had to leave, to go stay with my parents. It felt like a punch to the gut. I packed my things. I felt numb. Tears were blurring my vision. Arriving at my parents' house, their shocked expressions literally mirrored my own. I was still reeling from the fact that Justin had cold-heartedly kicked me out. My parents welcomed me warmly, without pressing for details. It was a relief not to have to explain myself immediately, but that respite was short-lived. Before the day even ended, Justin took matters into his own hands. He created a group chat that included me, my parents, and everyone else that we knew. In this chat, he dropped a bombshell, screenshots from my phone. Private messages and photos, ones I believed were hidden or locked away, were now laid bare for all to see. The betrayal cut deep, adding a new layer of humiliation and pain to the already devastating situation. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly betrayed. My parents, shocked and saddened by the revelation, tried to console me as best they could. They didn't pry, but their silence spoke volumes. I could see the disappointment in their eyes, and it only added to my shame. Justin's actions were deliberate and calculated. He wanted to hurt me, to show the world what I had done. It was a cruel and vindictive move, one that shattered any remaining hope I had of reconciliation. The days following everything was crazy. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from my in-laws. Their words were dripping with disdain. They accused me of never deserving Justin. They said I was always for the streets and that I never deserved Justin. Then Justin also sent me a message stating he would be serving me with divorce papers soon. As if that wasn't enough, my friends chimed in, their messages heavy with disappointment and judgment. I felt the weight of their words crushing me, adding to the overwhelming emotions I was already dealing with. My friends, who I hoped would offer comfort or understanding, were expressing their disappointment. It was a lonely feeling, knowing I had let down not just my husband, but everyone who cared about us. But the final blow came from Mark. He had previously blocked me, but he unblocked me and accused me of being a vindictive bitch. He claimed I had sent screenshots and pictures of our conversations to his wife. He called me a vindictive bitch, saying his marriage was now in jeopardy. I had to set the record straight, explaining that it was likely Justin who had exposed our affair, not me. Now, with my finances in ruins and my marriage shattered, I have to depend on my parents for support. It is a humbling experience, facing the consequences of my actions and realizing the depth of the hurt I had caused. Not being able to see my child and Justin's distant demeanor has evened to the pain. He won't talk to me unless it's for something important. I also know I'm facing an uphill battle in the divorce proceedings. Justin and Wilo likely get custody, and I will lose so much more than just my marriage. My brother, a lawyer, has also acknowledged this reality but can't represent me due to a conflict of interest and his lack of expertise in divorces. So I guess my message to you is please don't cheat. It's honestly not worth it at all. Thanks for listening.
Need advice quickly. I got myself in a big mess. BC, I dated his friend. Now he wants to divorce. I am in a very big mess because of my stupidity and desire for something new. I didn't know that he would find out about my abomination. He would actually want to end our union. I love him, and I actually don't see myself marrying another man. But him. What I did is ungodly and disgusting. But why would the consequences or karma deal with only me? Why am I the only one suffering while I was not alone in this whole thing? I know I am the one who is married, and I should have respected the vows that I had made in front of the Lord and our guests, especially our families. It was so evil of me to go against my vows and commit adultery while I am married. But it doesn't change the fact that I was not the only one performing the sinister. I dated his friend, so if he was to cut ties with me, he should also cut ties with his friends. But life is never fair on women's rights. All the guys' friendships have codes, right? I think they call it a bro code, a code whereby you vow not to either date or get into an intimate relationship with your friend's partner or sibling. The guy that I had cheated with had broken the code, but nothing was happening to him, while I was suffering the consequences of the actions that we had made. I really need help on this one. I am somehow confused, but I also want to fix my marriage with my husband. So my husband, Tony, male 35, and I, female 33, met at a mutual friend's wedding. Well, more like at my cousin's wedding. He was a friend of my cousin's husband. We were sitting at the same table. He was and still is a very handsome, clean, and sophisticated gentleman. I remember on the day we met, I had worn a very long dress, so it somehow tripped me and I almost fell. Imagine falling in front of all the people that were in that hall. It would have been such a bummer and embarrassing. So Tony luckily caught me beforehand since I was trying to stand when I tripped, and he was sitting next to me. His touch gave me goosebumps that I didn't even know I had. Not to mention his soft hands. It felt so right when they touched me. Even his gentle gesture was something else. What I felt for Tony was what I can call love at first sight. He didn't try much or said many words, but his gentleness and handsomeness drew me to him. During that day, we were talking and laughing. It was really nice to be with him. He was in good company. He made me forget about anything else. It felt like nothing was existing except for him and I. I even forgot that we were at my cousin's wedding. I had found a friend and also a lover there. I thought I had found the one my soul needed. He was my answered prayers, his gentleness, a big dreamer and a successful man who still had goals to be more successful than he was. I love a man who knows what they want and makes every means to get it. Mind you, at that time, I had a plan of starting my own internet cafe and coffee shop, and with Tony's knowledge and skills in IT, I knew I had gained resources to help me start a successful internet cafe. It seemed like it was a blessing in disguise, you know. It felt like with Tony by my side, I would have everything figured out, and it would be successful with his intelligence on board. Since then, we became friends. He taught me a lot about IT that I didn't know. Well, I wanted to start an internet cafe because we didn't have one in Sicily, only in big cities, which was far from where I was staying. So I wanted to help my community get easy access on the internet without even having to go to the big city for it. I made it specifically for students so that they can have easy access to the internet and be able to find school projects information in it without having to waste more money to get to the big city to get it. Tony helped me start the internet cafe, which was very sweet and generous of him. I was glad for the service that he had delivered. He started being a computer tutor. Each and every minute that I would spend with him was always priceless. I still melted in his touch and his voice. It had that kind of thing that makes you feel like you have been given some voodoo, or he uses voodoo to make my heart palpitate. Months later, Tony declared his love for me. Well, I had already felt something for him, and I was falling pretty hard for him, but I couldn't tell him. I was protecting my heart from being rejected and my ego and pride. He told me how much he enjoys spending time with me and thanked the opportunity that I had given of trusting him with my community children and students. Well, Tony was not from Sicily. He had first come for the wedding, which was the first day that we had first met. So Tony and I dated for 2 years. We were still in the phase of knowing each other very well before we tied the knot. It was the best option, and it gave us time to learn more about each other. I was happy with the fact that Tony was not rushing to any marriage. Yes, we were committed to each other. About 1.5 years later, he popped the biggest question. My love for him kept escalating. I don't know if I was getting obsessed with Tony, but I couldn't live without him. Even if he was not around or we were not talking either on the call or text, I would feel like he was up to no good. You know when you try to contact your partner and his phone keeps either putting you on hold or gets to voicemail at the same time? I was somehow insecure and I didn't want any woman to even see my Tony's side. He was mine and mine alone. Well, Tony was residing in Agrigento in the southern coast of Sicily, while my home was in Piazza Armerina, which was about 1 hour and some minutes drive apart. So he would go home for like a week, then come to see me whenever he was free, or I would go to his city when I was not busy. Our love was like a flower. It kept blossoming every minute that we would spend with each other or when we were communicating. Months later, well, we had gotten 2 years of dating, so we got married on the day of our dating anniversary. You know, it's really nice and fulfilling having to spend the rest of your life with your favorite person who is also your partner. We got to share all our flaws, our dreams, our future and plans. After getting married, we moved to Cefalù, where we wanted to start our own family. We were living the dream, and I couldn't be much happier. I mean, why wouldn't you be happy when you have been given a chance to spend the rest of your life with someone who you fell in love with on the first day that you saw him? I fell in love with Tony the day we had first met. Deep down, I knew that he was my soulmate and my caregiver. He didn't have to try hard to make me happy and feel complete. He knew how to make me feel better during my dull days. He always knew how to put a smile on my face. But you know, when I was to be asked why I cheated or dated his friend, I don't know how I would answer that question because I have no response for it. Anyway, time passed. Tony started getting too busy to spend time with me. Yes, the intimate moments were still fine, but I needed his attention and I wanted to spend more time with him. I mean, we had stayed far away from each other for almost 2 years when we were still dating. Ever since we got married, we had spent a couple of times together. We would go out, eat out, or go to play games. My relationship or my marriage with Tony was somehow great because we would always allow ourselves to be young again. Playing games, going out on ice cream dates, attending exhibitions together. We were stress-free and carefree. It was like we were in our very own dimension, living with our rules. So one sunny Saturday, Tony had left the house to buy meat. He had asked me to prepare something since his friends were coming over to celebrate his other friend's arrival in Italy. I have heard that he was residing in Los Angeles, LA, but now he had relocated to this side. So I prepared everything and Tony's other friends started coming with their partners. Of course, everyone was having a good time up until the man of the day arrived. You know when someone says, "I feel like I am looking at Jesus himself"? Well, that was what I felt. His body structure, cleanly trimmed mustache, his sexy hazel blue eyes. I was taken aback by the guy. He was really handsome. You know, the kind of handsome Leonardo DiCaprio. That was how he looked. His eyes looked naughty though, and I love being naughty. The guy was not at my wedding with Tony. I had heard that he was working since he was a doctor. The guy was introduced as Bradley, male, 33. His appearance was charming and mind-blowing. You know when you see someone for the first time and automatically feel attracted to them? That was how I felt with Bradley. I was not attracted to him because of his handsomeness only, but I would sometimes imagine myself being intimate with him. I imagined myself and him riding and grinding each other. My imaginations went wild to a point that I would see him exploring my whole body, his pinkish, sexy lips kissing every fiber of my body. I know it was wrong of me to drool and think like that for my husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. I mean, the guy was everything and more. I just wanted or craved for only one night with him, then it would have been enough for me. I am a witch and a loose cannon, I know. But how was I supposed to stop my mind and desire to think about the poor guy? Mind you, that time he was going to be staying with us for some time up until he gets his own place to stay. So imagine the torture and pressure that I would be feeling. I know it's sinister to have these kinds of thoughts for your husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. Only one night with him was going to solve everything. As much as I love my handsome, smart husband, Bradley was the type of guy that you can only have a crush on and date because he was too extreme. His handsomeness, the way he was speaking, would make any woman drop their panties for him. 1 week later, we were still staying with Bradley. Well, most of the time I was with him in the house. He is a very cool guy, carefree, talkative, and funny. He easily adjusted to the new environment and it was going well for him. I had seen him doing workouts a few times in the morning. His abs were something else. I felt like I would touch them. I had so many dirty thoughts for the poor guy, and I really wanted to stop thinking like that with my husband's friend. During that week, I remembered that I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for both me and him. He came in wearing only a very tight vest and jogging shorts. He just stayed with me in the kitchen, keeping me company. Only if he knew that his company was a destruction to me. He started asking me about my relationship or my marriage with Tony, wanting to know how it was. I told him what he needed to hear and found it enough to share. I couldn't tell him everything about my marriage. Yes, he was my husband's friend, but I couldn't tell him everything that is going on between Tony and I. Mind you, that time, Ton and I had been arguing a lot lately about him being always absent even when his friend is around. That led to a very heated and biggest argument. My husband and I were slowly drifting apart. Yes, our connection and love would always be there, but we were drifting apart. I felt like he was trying to push me away because even when he is under stress and pressure, he no longer confides in me as his wife. I would sometimes wonder who he confides to if he was shutting me out the way he was doing. It really hurt me having to beg every day for your partner to give you the attention that you need. The more I was spending time with Bradley, the more we got closer. I ended up confiding in him about Tony's behavior because it was really shocking to me. I didn't know who to talk to, so Bradley was the only person who was willing to listen to me vent about my marriage. I know I shouldn't have done that, but what I was supposed to do. Because I couldn't keep my sadness and heartbreaking moments inside my chest. I was going to burst, and a lot would have been destroyed. So Bradley prepared snacks for us, especially marshmallows and hot chocolate, which were my favorite when I was not feeling well or feeling down. I appreciated the time and ear that Bradley had led me and made me vent in him. I needed to offload, my chest was too heavy. As I was crying like that, Bradley hugged me and promised me that he would speak to Tony. Since Tony had been so distant, especially after the argument that we had, he started going to work early in the morning and came back late at night. Bradley's hug was actually what I needed. You know, the kind of hug that is warm and welcoming, the one that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. So as we were still hugging, I found myself kissing him. We kissed, and things got out of hand. A kiss escalated. We ended up doing the deed in the lounge. Mind you, that time I had forgotten that Tony had recently planted CCTV cameras in the house. I had completely forgotten about that, and Bradley didn't even know about it. Since that indescribable day, Bradley and I continued seeing each other. Sometimes we would get intimate in my marital home, while some other time we would go to a nearest hotel to book for the day. We couldn't book for the night because my husband was going to be suspicious. We did our thing carefully because if Tony was to find us, we both knew that we were going to suffer the consequences, and I would be left a divorced woman. Bradley was giving it to me so sweet and gentle. He was very explosive. He knew how to explore a woman's body and make her feel foreign and end up speaking in tongues. He knew every spot to touch to make me submit to his commands. Well, he loved gentle, rough, intimate moments. I didn't even know that there was actually gentle, rough type of intimate sessions. I learned a lot from Bradley, even some new positions that someone would think are extreme, but they are very enjoyable and nice. I was not a submissive wife to my husband, but with Bradley, I was submissive without even thinking twice. My husband loved missionary intimacy, while Bradley loved exploring new positions, and I learned a lot. I mean, my own husband was a 1 or 2 rounds type of person, then he would get tired and fall asleep. Bradley, on the other hand, was a dragon. He was spitting fire when it comes to intimacy. He would make you go all night and even wake you in the morning. He would always leave my private area burning and tired. The guy knew his thing, and up until today I complimented him. He is the best. My relationship with Bradley went on and on for like 9 months. We were still careful, but Bradley didn't want us to be private. He wanted us to be seen in public as dating people, and that was not what I had wanted. As much as I was enjoying the intimacy and everything that Bradley was offering, but I loved my husband so much. I wouldn't just leave my husband for an intimacy freak like Bradley. He is doing me good and exploring my body the way I had been desiring, but I wouldn't divorce my husband to be with him. He didn't understand that our relationship was an intimate relationship only and nothing more or less. But the poor guy had caught feelings, and that was not what we had agreed on. It was purely and strictly intimacy. Weeks later, I ended my affair with Bradley. I felt like I had destroyed my marriage and went against my wedding vows. I shouldn't have allowed temptations and desires to control me like that. I should have respected myself and my marriage with Tony. Bradley had started to catch feelings, and it was not looking good because we would sometimes argue about his obsessive behavior. I don't know why he was suddenly obsessed, because we had an agreement of no strings attached, but he decided to attach strings on our thing, and the whole thing got crushed. I went back to my marital home. I wished to change the location and buy a new home for Tony and myself because the house held so many memories. Even the memory of myself committing adultery for the first time was in my marital home. I felt like I had disrespected my husband in the worst way possible, and there was no way to undo what I had done. I know I had wanted or craved for Bradley for at least one night, but it shouldn't have escalated like it did. And guess what happened? I was F***ed. Few days later, Tony was back at home. Well, he was working at home most of the time. The guilt was eating me up like a deadly disease. I had tried to act normal around my husband, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was wrong. I couldn't bear looking at him and acting like a happy wife while I knew what I had done. Tony, being as nonchalant as ever, didn't seem to notice anything amiss. The guilt and anxiety of my abomination grew with each passing day. The following week, it was a Monday afternoon. I was watering the garden when our family lawyer came to the house. I was so confused by why Hamilton, our lawyer, would come to our house. I knew that he wouldn't come if it was not important or urgent, so I started getting palpitations. My mind drifted to Tony. I had thought something had happened to him. I couldn't bear to see myself being a widow. My mind was busy taking me to places that I didn't want to see myself in. Hamilton asked to speak with me and told me that it was important. I knew that he wouldn't leave his specious and fancy office and come to my house if it wasn't important. So we went inside and he gave me an envelope. He told me that he was sent by Tony and that I should read everything properly first before signing. Another thing he told me was that I was free to fight and try to save whatever that would be lost after signing, but he didn't think fighting would be a good idea. The way he was speaking in riddles, I got conscious and ended up opening the envelope. When I opened the envelope, I couldn't believe my eyes. I felt like my heart was stepped on by an elephant and my body was hit by a truck. I was lost in words. I told Hamilton that I wouldn't let Tony divorce me without a fight, and I was not going to sign those divorce papers. I didn't know why Tony would want to divorce me. That time, the abomination that I had done didn't even cross my mind. I kept trying to sort the puzzles and asking myself, why would Tony suddenly want to divorce me? Few days later, Tony and I were in the magistrate's office with both our lawyers. I couldn't just let him take everything away from me. I was asked to state why I didn't want to sign the divorce papers. I told them that I couldn't let Tony, my husband, leave me without any explanation on why he would wake up and decide that he wanted to divorce me and take our home. And I couldn't just let him break my heart like that. When it was Tony's turn to speak or defend himself, he said the worst hurtful things to me. He called me names and told me that he was regretting ever marrying me. If he knew I was a witch that I was, he wouldn't even bother looking my way the day we met. He was furious to see that even temple veins were popping. He looked murderous, and he wasn't the Tony that I had been married to. He then dropped a huge bomb at me that I had long forgotten about. He told me that he knew about my affair with Bradley, his friend, and that I had been seen going to the hotel with Bradley when he was at work. I couldn't believe how he got the information. He told me that he had been acting like everything is normal and okay, but he knew all the dirt that I had done, so he wants nothing to do with me. and I should just go back home and continue running my internet cafe and a coffee shop. I denied every allegation that he was accusing me of. I even denied being in any relationship with Bradley. While I was still fighting, screaming, and kicking, Tony gave Hamilton a USB. And there it was. All the evidence of my abomination was there. I didn't know what to say nor do. I had no way back. I didn't even know how to defend myself. It was really humiliating and embarrassing. I tried to apologize to Tony, but he wanted to hear nothing from me. I had no other choice but to obey his request. I went back home and signed the papers. My heart was shuttered. Even today, when I think of everything, my heart breaks. I miss Tony so much, and I regret everything that I have done. What should I do to get my husband back? I can't let him go like that. I need advice quickly.